Hey Reddit, I'm honestly just sitting in my room right now, staring at my phone, and my hands are kind of shaking while I type this. I'm just, I'm so exhausted. I feel like I've been running a marathon for the last 10 years of my life, and I just reached the finish line only to find out the track keeps going. I really need to get this all out because I feel like I'm losing my mind. And I need to know if I'm actually the horrible, cold hearted daughter my mom says I am, or if I'm finally just seeing things for what they really are. So let's start from the beginning. My mom and I have always had a pretty, toxic relationship, honestly. A pretty difficult relationship, to put it mildly. And it has been exactly that way since her and my dad, 37M, got divorced way back when I was only 7 years old. Pretty much the exact second my parents sat me down and told me they were getting a divorce, everything shifted. My mom immediately packed up her things and moved into her own separate apartment. Right off the bat, I hated the new arrangement. I didn't like the fact that she wanted me to stay with a random babysitter after school on her days, especially when I could have easily just stayed with my dad. My dad wanted me there, he was available, but when I begged her to just let me go to dad's house after school, my mom's excuse was literally that she didn't want to have to talk to your father like that every day. So, yeah, think about that for a second. I was a literal 7 year old child dealing with the entire world cracking open under my feet, and I had to go sit in a strange apartment with a stranger because my mother couldn't handle having a 2 minute, slightly awkward conversation with my dad at the front door. She prioritized avoiding her own discomfort over my basic sense of safety. That was the baseline she set. Then, literally a couple of months later, and I mean just a tiny handful of weeks after the split, she gets into a serious relationship with this guy, Stu, who was 44 at the time. He's the man she ended up marrying later on. Looking back, we both handled the whole transition horribly. I mean, obviously I did. I was a kid. I was 8 years old by then, and I was constantly yelling and crying because I just wanted my parents back together. I wanted my old life back. I didn't know who this strange older guy was, and I didn't want him in my space, but instead of giving me a second to breathe, or giving me any kind of space to process the fact that my family was gone, she completely rammed this guy down my throat. She pushed me so incredibly hard to love him. She kept asking me over and over to look at him as another dad. She kept trying to force me to be okay with him babysitting me when she was at work, and she constantly tried to set up these mandatory one-to-one hangouts between me and him. Like, go play cards with Stu, or Stu's going to take you to the park today, just the two of you. It was way too early for that. I had only had a few months to work through the entire trauma of the divorce, and she was already demanding that I completely open up my heart to a total stranger. I broke. I broke my trust with her completely during that period because it felt like she didn't care about my grief at all. She just cared about making her new relationship convenient. And then she moved him into the house the exact second the divorce from my dad went through. Like, the ink wasn't even dry on the legal papers, and suddenly Stu's clothes are in the closet, Stu's toothbrush is in the bathroom, and he's just there all the time. After that, it felt like living in a pressure cooker. If I ever tried to call my dad during her designated parenting time, she would get so visibly annoyed. She'd roll her eyes or sigh loudly. Every single time I picked up the phone to talk to my father, she would turn it into a massive fight. She'd look at me and say, "Why don't you talk to Stu instead? Why don't you go tell Stu about your day at school?" Like, why would I talk to a guy I barely knew about my feelings when my actual dad, the guy who raised me, was just a phone call away? It made zero sense, but to her, my loyalty to my dad was a personal insult to her new life. When my mom and Stu finally got engaged and were planning the wedding, my mom came into my room and asked me if I would be his little best girl for the ceremony. I looked her right in the eyes and I said, "No." I didn't want to stand up there and pretend this was a happy fairy tale for me. But my mom completely blew past my answer. She told me flat out that I was doing it whether I wanted to or not, and that I didn't have a choice. I was so angry and felt so completely powerless that I looked at her and said, "If you force me to stand up there, I am going to scream really, really loud and make the entire wedding suck." I meant it too. I was ready to absolutely ruin it because that was the only leverage an 11-year-old kid had against being completely steamrolled. She eventually backed off, but she never forgave me for it. Soon after my mom remarried, my dad actually started dating someone briefly. I remember meeting her, and honestly, I didn't take it well at all. I was still so messed up from the situation at my mom's house that I had a total meltdown. But you know what my dad did? He didn't tell me, "Too bad, deal with it." He didn't force her into the house. He saw that I was genuinely struggling, so he put his entire love life completely on hold until I was much older. He sacrificed his own romantic happiness for years just to make sure I felt secure. My mom, though, she got super weird and bitter about him even trying to date. She'd make these passive aggressive comments about it around the house. I remember one day we got into this huge blowout argument about it, and I told her straight to her face that she was being dumb and that since she had replaced my dad so fast, maybe he should replace her too. She lost her absolute mind. She started yelling, telling me that Stu was better than my dad anyway, and demanding to know why I wouldn't just let him in. I yelled right back. I told her he was dumb, I didn't want him, and he was never, ever going to be my dad. This exact same fight literally happened over and over for years. It was like a loop we could never get out of. And then, one afternoon, when the argument got incredibly heated, I finally snapped and told her I wished Dad had found me another mom because then it would be totally fair. When I said that, it was like the air sucked out of the room. My mom had some kind of massive emotional episode right then and there. She started hyperventilating and crying hysterically, claiming that it was the most cruel, vicious thing anyone could ever say to a mother's face. And yeah, looking back, maybe it was a harsh thing to say, but I was drowning. I wanted her to understand, even for just 1 second, how much it hurt to feel like a parent can just be swapped out like an old piece of furniture. It was a few months after that fight that I finally reached my absolute breaking point. I couldn't handle the screaming matches, the forced family dinners, or the constant walking on eggshells around Stu. I begged my dad to take her to court and ask for full custody. I told him I would talk to the judge myself if I had to, so he did. He took her back to court, and when the judge looked at the whole situation and listened to what I actually wanted, the court granted my dad full custody based entirely on my wishes. After that court date, my life changed drastically. I only had to spend 4 hours every other Saturday with my mom. That was it. No more sleepovers, no more packing bags, and most importantly, the judge explicitly ruled that I did not have to interact with Stu. But even with a court order, my mom couldn't respect my boundaries. A bunch of times during those Saturday visits, I'd show up at the diner or the park we were supposed to meet at, and I'd see Stu sitting right there next to her. She thought if she just ambushed me, I'd be forced to sit down and play nice. But every single time she did that, I would literally turn right around on my heel, walk back to the parking lot, and get straight back into my dad's car. I wouldn't even say a word to her. Eventually, it just got to be too much. For a whole entire year, from the time I turned 17 until I turned 18, I went completely 100% no contact with her. I just blocked her number and blocked her out of my life. I couldn't do it anymore. She kept trying to call my dad, trying to push for those Saturday visits, trying to claim her legal right to see me. But I refused. She finally, truly figured out that I was dead serious about not seeing her when my 18th birthday hit. She had sent all these messages through my dad about wanting to see me, but I celebrated my birthday completely without her. I had a great day with my dad and my friends, and I didn't look back. I think that birthday was a massive wake up call for her. She realized she was completely losing me as I transitioned into an adult. So, a few weeks later, she reached out through my dad again and asked if I would please, just please, consider going to family therapy with her. I thought about it for a long time. I realized that since I'm 18 now, the power dynamic has shifted. She can't force me into a room with Stu anymore. So I figured, fine, sure, let's try therapy. We've been going to family therapy for a little over a month now. The first few sessions were pretty standard, I guess. It was basically just us explaining our sides of the history to the therapist. I told the therapist about the babysitters, the forced wedding stuff, and the court battles. My mom told her side about how lonely she felt and how hard she tried. It was heavy, but it felt like we were actually doing work. But then came last session. Last week, my mom decided to drop all the therapy talk and try this massive calculated guilt trip to force me into seeing Stu as more than just her husband. Halfway through the session, she completely broke down. And I don't just mean she shed a few tears, she was sobbing, shaking, the whole 9 yards. She looked at me and started pouring her heart out, saying how she had only ever been with my dad her entire life before she met Stu. She said she felt like she was suffocating in her marriage to my dad, and she just couldn't stay with him anymore and only ever know one person for the rest of her days. But then she shifted the focus on to me. She started crying harder, saying she didn't want to lose her family because of her choice. She said she needed Stu to be my dad as well because that was the only way it would feel like we had a perfect, normal family. When she finished this big speech, she looked at me, clearly waiting for me to reach out or cry or apologize or say something comforting. But I didn't. I just sat there in my armchair. I didn't rush to comfort her. I didn't move an inch. I just looked at her because I didn't react the way she wanted. She started sobbing even harder, almost hysterically, repeating over and over again how she just wanted us to be a normal family, but it couldn't happen with my dad. And then she said, "It completely kills me that your dad can date now and have relationships and you're fine with it, but you won't let me be fully happy in mine." I sat there listening to her lay the guilt on thicker and thicker, comparing herself to my dad again, making it out like I was this cruel warden keeping her from being happy. I took a deep breath, looked her dead in the eye, and asked a very quiet, very deliberate question. I said, "Would you be cool with me calling Dad's next girlfriend Mom and letting her be my other mom?" The second the words left my mouth, her crying instantly stopped. I mean, it was wild. It was like someone literally flipped a light switch. The tears vanished, the sobbing stopped, and her face just turned completely cold. The therapist started to speak, trying to interject and unpack what I had just asked, but my mom completely ignored him. She didn't say a word to the therapist. She didn't look at me. She just grabbed her purse, stood up, walked out of the office, and slammed the door behind her. She left the session early, just like that. And now she is absolutely furious at me. Ever since that session, she has been sending me these long, angry text messages. She asked me how I could be so incredibly cold hearted. She literally typed out, "How could you just sit there and watch your own mother cry and pour her heart out to you, and you still won't give me what I want?" And honestly, seeing that sentence in a text message, it just made something click in my brain. It leads me to question our entire relationship, and it really makes me look back at everything clearly. Read that text again. She didn't say, "How could you see me crying and not know how much I love you?" She said, "And you still won't give me what I want." That is the whole point, isn't it? Her breakdown wasn't about healing our relationship. It wasn't about understanding my pain or apologizing for the past 10 years. It was a performance. It was a weapon. She used her tears as a tool to try and force me into caving because she thought if she cried hard enough in front of a therapist, the guilt would finally break my boundaries down and I'd give in to her demands about Stu. And the exact second she realized that her crying wasn't going to make me give her what she wanted, the tears dried up instantly, and she threw a tantrum and walked out. It makes me realize how much happier I truly was during that entire year of no contact. I was so much more at peace when I wasn't trying to force some fake, shallow relationship with her just to keep her happy. When I was away from her, I didn't have this constant knot of anxiety in my stomach, but at the same time, it's so hard because she is my only mom. I don't get a backup, and despite me asking her that question about the other mom, which I only said to explicitly throw her own double standard back in her face, the truth is, I would never actually see another woman as my mom, just like I am never, ever going to see another man as my dad. I have a mom and I have a dad. Stu is just the guy she lives with, and I don't owe him a piece of my soul just to validate her life choices. I don't know, Reddit. Am I crazy here? Am I being an absolute monster for not comforting my mother when she breaks down? Or was her entire therapy meltdown just a weird, desperate way to try and manipulate me into finally giving in?